Hello, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are on this beautiful planet of ours. Welcome to Sustainability in Your Ear, the podcast conversation about accelerating the transition to a sustainable, carbon neutral society. I'm your host, Mitch Ratcliffe. Thanks for joining the conversation today. The challenge of making sustainable choices can often feel overwhelming, expensive, inconvenient, or just plain confusing. But what if being eco-responsible didn't have to be hard? What if sustainability could seamlessly integrate into daily life without sacrificing style, comfort, or efficiency? Few have tackled this question as creatively as our guest today, Josh Dorfman. From hosting The Lazy Environmentalist on SiriusXM and the Sundance Channel to launching innovative green businesses like Vine, which is a green retail shop on Amazon, or Planted, which is plant with a D, a low-carbon building materials company, Josh has made sustainability accessible, engaging, and even effortless. Now, as the founder of Supercool, he's exploring the intersection of climate tech and cultural transformation, spotlighting groundbreaking innovations that could shape a greener future. We're going to dive into Josh's journey, how he went from writing best-selling books on eco-living to developing carbon-negative building materials, as well as rethinking the way we shop for impact. We'll also explore what it takes to build a truly impactful environmental movement and how business can drive real change without compromising on convenience or profitability. You can learn more about Josh and his current project at getsupercool.com. Get Supercool is all one word, no space, no dash. GetSupercool.com. We'll jump into the conversation right after this quick commercial break. Welcome to the show, Josh. How you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful, Mitch. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. It's a little early in the morning, but it's always good to talk to an interesting person like you. You've done a lot of different things. What started the Lazy Environmentalist in the first place? How did you start thinking about changing public perceptions about environmentalism?
Well, if there's a quick version, it starts in for me going to China in the mid 90s. When I finished up college, 1994, I was looking around as an international relations major and was pretty clear for some reason that China was going to be a big deal in the 21st century. And so I went over to Nanjing. I got a job teaching English, was thinking about State Department, maybe in some, fantasy CIA, but I was just like, I need to get over there, learn this culture, learn this language, understand this country. And I got a part-time job working for Kryptonite Bike Locks in their
Yeah.
first factory in mainland China, about 20 minutes from where I was teaching, and then went to work for them full time. We opened more factories. We were looking at the Chinese market, and my second year there, I just had this realization. I just thought, oh my gosh, there's a billion people riding bicycles here, but nobody wants a bike. Everybody wants a car. And you can see the bridges, tunnels, highways, all this infrastructure coming in so fast. And I thought, I don't know anything about global warming, but this is going to be problematic. And you've got
Mhm.
India and Eastern Europe, and everyone's developing. What's going to happen as we move, as everyone advances, develops, and we get more cars on the road, and we just keep increasing, our consumer habits. That ultimately led me to come back to the States, continue to think about that, and eventually felt, you know what? I live in a consumer-driven culture. I am going to aim to shift consumption in a more sustainable direction. Lazy Environmentalist wasn't my first foray. That was a little bit of an accidental brand when I had started a modern design, eco-friendly furniture company back in
Okay.
2004. And my first employee on her last day working for me took that opportunity to tell me what a terrible environmentalist I was in my personal life, even though I was selling all this green stuff. Hence, the Lazy Environmentalist was born.
You hit on an important point, which is a lot of folks expect perfection, and perfection takes, well, pretty much forever. Why does the perception of environmentalism need to change? Before we start any of the other part of this conversation, why do we need to change it?
Well, I think there's a number of perceptions that probably need to change. The view that I came to, I didn't start there. I think I probably went through a process that I think a lot of people go through. When I started becoming attuned to environmental issues, I became panicked, obsessive,
Mhm.
crazy. Nobody, and what I started just recognizing was like, man, like nobody who I love or care about wants to hang out with me anymore. I'm not actually influencing anybody to change their behavior just because I'm so, panicked about the future. And I thought that I have to find a way to just be in my life and be more comfortable, and find a way to communicate that I think can break through. And I do think that a lot of people are open to a conversation and a message that has a practical element to it that
Yeah.
doesn't, right? I think maybe that's where you're going with the question, but that's early on after some real pain. I mean, I remember walking with my mom in New York City when I came home from China and being like, why are all the lights on? It was like 10 o'clock at night, right? And she's
Mhm.
like, child, like, I think we need to find you some therapy. So I have a lot of empathy for that perfection, or that, that
Yeah.
where that comes from. But I do think that the practicality can potentially, well, I do think it's more impactful. I do think you can drive more change that way.
Yeah, I know this feeling. I mean, having written about recycling and sustainable living now for a decade and having cared about it since the 80s when I did kind of go crazy. It's what I've realized is people want actionable opportunities. They want to consider something, but they don't want to be told what to do. Do you, is that part of the problem that the environmental movement has had, is it's been very prescriptive?
It's the challenge that it's been very prescriptive. I think that the challenge is that, to me, there's so many opportunities to frame what's good for the environment also in people's own personal self-interest.
Hmm.
And I think maybe environmentalists may struggle with that concept, right? It's not just this pure, no, I'm doing this to, like, that's pure environmentalism for the planet, but it's like, well, hey, like, we live on this planet, and there's just, you think about health, right? You think about, one of the things that I've gotten very excited about over the last couple of years is look at, hospitals that get built green and patient outcomes improve, or
Yeah.
schools that get built green and attendance goes up, bad behavior goes down, performance goes up, students, teachers, everyone's happier, communities are happier. That's great for the planet, that's great for humans, and it improves our life. And so I think if you want to encourage change over the long haul for most people, because you got to be in this for decades, just like you, right? I mean, and
Yeah.
we've got 2050 targets. I just think the way to say to people, we're going to do something really great for the planet, and in the process, we're going to enhance what it means. We're going to enhance our civilization. We're going to enhance our quality of life. I don't think those things are run counter to each other. I think there is a path where they are aligned. I personally find that very appealing, and I think a lot of people, do as well.
Yeah, and I think that alignment is the interesting question, is that we all want to go somewhere together, and together is the key word. But right now we're tearing ourselves apart in order to decide where we're going to go. So and what I like about what you're doing with Supercool, and by the way, I'm inviting a competitor on my show. It doesn't bother me, right? Okay, we need this movement. Let's all go somewhere. But what's the right way to make environmentalism cool in the Trump era?
Well, the right way to make it cool in the Trump, gosh, I really like how you frame your questions, Mitch. To me, again, I think this is about, well, Trump era or non-Trump era. I mean,
Okay.
right? We live certainly in the U.S. in the most capitalist, I believe, society on the planet. Maybe there's, I don't know, maybe you could say Singapore or somewhere else more free market, but right. So to me, there's a conversation to be had that resonates, where there's a financial component to it, or there's an
Yeah.
economic component to it. There's that, and again, that comes back to, it doesn't have to be just personal self-interest, right? We did a story. It's probably a story you would do too. We went and looked at Iowa, because Iowa has, as a percentage of its energy, the most wind energy, on
Mhm.
its grid, and exports energy to other states as well. And so what I wanted to understand was, well, one, how that happened, but two, why and who benefits, right? And so it's not just the planet, farmers, right, who are leasing land, but then also that tax base for rural communities. And so rural communities can get more fire departments and police stations and libraries built as a result of clean energy, regardless of the politics of the people in that community. And those economic arguments and those kinds of, I think, stories or situations are just incredibly compelling because there's such a practicality. And I do think that's a way that you transcend, these left-right divides. There's a through line there that I think speaks to people in a way that has a lot of resonance.
Well, when you start making a living being sustainable, it really changes the game. But when you tell everybody they need to be sustainable so that they might have a living in the future, you present them a quandary they cannot resolve.
Yeah.
I think you do that with the lazy environmentalist. You've done that. You're a multimedia monster, right? So this started as a blog, it became a radio show, then a TV series, and a set of books. How does your approach to environmental advocacy reflect the media environment that you've grown into?
So their through line from lazy environmentalists to Supercool, there is this through line of practicality, self-interest. Lazy environmentalists, we were talking about consumer-facing stories. Now we're talking about business-facing stories, right? But to me, okay, I want to tell you about a great business. I think there's a business case here for, name a company called Zoom, Z-U-M, that's essentially electrifying student bus transportation and using AI to optimize school bus routes. Amazing company, right? The business case is incredible for that. But to go tell that story, it's a story, right? So how do we take this business case, wrap a narrative around it that's going to be incredibly appealing, bring in data that actually gives it some quantification, right? So there's more to latch onto and more for the naysayers to, less for them to kind of dismiss, right?
Yeah.
And then spin the economic argument on it, or what it does for schools, what it does for businesses, what it does for homes. That's been the through line for me. All of it has to be around great story. I just don't see how else you break through and really reach people.
So what are a couple of great stories about here? You changed your personal behavior.
How I've changed my personal
Yeah.
behavior.
Yeah. How did you get less
Well,
imperfect?
I married a woman who's more of an environmentalist than I am, so that was, that's a good forcing mechanism. When we were first dating and getting to know each other, I think we had takeout Japanese, and she was cleaning out the little wasabi thing to recycle, and I thought, man, I'm gonna marry this woman. Um, this is very, very, she's over there just shaking her head. Um, to me, I'm always looking for so yes, the easy ways, the easy, convenient, delightful ways. One of the things that I've come across recently that I'm very excited about. Have you seen Climate First Bank? What I like about that business, so we always talk, or there's a lot of talk in the environmental movement about shift your money, get it out of the banks, get it out of, so you're not underwriting fossil fuels, since most of the major banks, all of them, I think, still underwrite fossil
Yeah,
fuels.
all of them do.
But I hadn't seen an alternative until Climate First Bank that not only offered the personal banking, but also commercial business banking.
Mhm.
So that feels new to me. I'm excited about that. So as a small business owner, I can shift my finances along with my personal finances, and align that all with my values. That's an easy, exciting, I think there's a lot of upside opportunity in that. And then, it kind of goes back to Supercool. This week on the show, we looked at this company called Upway,
Mhm.
that is essentially coming into the e-bike market, which is growing, probably faster than the electric vehicle market. That's
Yeah.
fascinating. Um, but what's been missing is sort of this Carvana-like secondhand, well-structured used market. And so these guys from Uber, you know, built this company called Upway that's streamlining and using all their kind of operational expertise to, you one, make e-bikes like 50 or 60% cheaper to a customer if you want it for the same, for a really good bike.
Mhm.
What was interesting to me, so that's the consumer facing side, but from the super cool side, what really struck me was Upway is doing this re-commerce thing. So if you're buying a bike from, say, Aventon or Electric or somebody else, some online e-bike company, and you don't want it, that return is actually going to Upway, right? They're handling all those back-end third-party logistics, and that kind of makes the whole industry grow and become more buoyant and lets people focus on what they're good at. So
Well, and you're
those
hitting on
types
a
of,
really, really important point, which is right now, most of the hard work in this is a logistical challenge. You mentioned optimizing roads and streets earlier. How do you see the place we are in the evolution of technology, which many people see as a threat as well, in terms of our opportunity to actually solve these problems?
we're having this conversation a lot. I've been reflecting a lot over the last 6 weeks or so on this question of, do we have enough technology here to solve climate change already? I think the
Mhm.
answer is probably yes. We're going to get more. It's going to get better. The
Yep.
real question, I think it still goes to what we've been talking about in this conversation, is how do you gain adoption, right? Okay, you've got solar, you've got storage now for home batteries, right? You can pair them up, you can create turn your house into its own mini power plant. That's awesome. How do you get more people to do it? So that's the thing that kind of lights me up. We were talking to this guy who uh, have you ever spoken to Eric Corey Fried? He wrote Green Building for Dummies. He's like
I
this
have not.
architect's been around forever. As he says, he's been practicing green architecture since the late 1900s. But about 5 years ago, he joined a firm called Cannon Design as their head of sustainability. And Cannon Design is one of the largest architecture firms in the world. And
Mhm.
so he got his platform, right? And they're doing incredible net zero buildings. They've done some with the federal government that are just stunning. They've even done like retrofit net zero energy buildings, which is really
Yeah.
fascinating, right? It's not even a new build. And so, I was talking to him. I said, well, what's different? And he's like, we don't ask for permission anymore. We're not asking you. We're not waiting for the RFP that says, hey, we want a green building. Can you guys do it? We get a client. It's like, we're giving you a green building because it's
Yeah.
healthier, it's higher performance, everyone's going to love it. We'll couch it in however you need to get on board with it, client, but this is happening, right? And so I just think there's like this different approach that is extremely compelling to me when you think about adoption. How do you get adoption? And that's because the products, he can build a building that his client's going to love, and he's going to do all the green stuff that he wants to do at the same time.
That's interesting. In my consulting work, we're taking the same strategy, which is if you want to do something, we're going to help you do it regeneratively. It's a better solution, and the result with the client is often, wow, you were right.
Yeah, yeah,
If you start with it, if you lead with it, you stop the
right.
conversation about two-thirds of the time.
Yeah. The other thing that I would say related, we did a show. I found this guy, Kyle Wagenschutz, who in 2010, the mayor of Memphis hired him to try to get Memphis off the worst place to bicycle list from Bicycle Magazine 2 years running. Right? That was his job. He was one of like a handful of bike activists in Memphis. He got plucked. He just done his master's, and they're like, get me off the list. That's your sole mandate. He did it. He learned a lot about how do you build a coalition of support, in a place that really has no biking culture, right? How do you go do that in middle America? And so he led this program, or this trial, I guess you could say, with People for Bikes, this national advocacy group for biking. And they went into New Orleans, Providence, Rhode Island, Pittsburgh, Denver, and Austin. And they said, okay, it takes decades to get bike lanes built in our cities. Like, it
Mm.
should take months, but it takes forever. We think we know why. And so they did it. In 24 months, they built collectively 335 bike lanes, safe, connected bike lanes in these cities. And I just thought, man, that's amazing. I want to understand that. And so he said a lot of interesting things. But one of the things he said that really struck me, he said, look, like, if you're going to go do this for a city, the last thing you need to do is spend your time getting bicyclists on board with your plan. They're already
Yeah.
on board. Don't even talk to them. The people that you need to get on board with your plan are the people who are never going to use those bike lanes, are the car drivers. And if you can figure that out, then that clears the runway and bike lanes go forward. And say, okay, well, how do you do that? And so, Kyle says, well, we tested a lot of things. In many places, you appeal to nostalgia. Remember when you were growing up, when streets were a little slower, when everyone could be outside and you knew your neighbors, that whole shtick, so to speak. He's like, but it has a lot of resonance, and we put this playbook together, and we can get the outcomes that everybody wants, right? It's a little bit counterintuitive, but I find that there's a lot of people now who are looking at, innovation isn't just technology. Innovation is, all of this is innovation, because you're doing something in a different way to get the result.
Yeah, it's behavior change at scale.
It's behavior change at scale. Yeah. How do you do that really, really well?
Well, this is why I knew this was going to be an interesting conversation. There's so many interesting stories here. I want to continue, but we need to take a quick commercial break. We're going to be right back. Now let's get back to the conversation with Josh Dorfman. He's the host of the Lazy Environmentalist and Supercool podcast. He also is the author of two books called The Lazy Environmentalist. And he recently launched a project called Planted, a low carbon materials company. Josh, you've got a lot of balls in the air. What possessed you to co-found Planted to create carbon negative building materials? It seems like yet another 24-hour a day job.
Well, my friends do joke that, I did create this brand, The Lazy Environmentalist, but they're like, dude, we
You're
never
not
even see
lazy.
you. All you're doing. Yeah. So 6 years ago, 2018, 2019, I had started my second modern design sustainable furniture company, this time
Mhm.
manufacturing. It was called Assembly, like simple assembly. So it was kind of like a Kia style, all, FSC certified woods, local manufacturing in North Carolina, trying to do this as sustainably and attainably priced as possible. It was fun. The COVID hit, our ability to make new product and manufacture really, of course, was impaired. Our ability to source material was extremely impaired. And when I could get this FSC certified wood, and it was called Apple Ply, it was actually coming from Oregon. It's the highest quality FSC certified plywood probably on the planet. It's beautiful. The quality was going down, probably as a result of COVID, and the prices were skyrocketing. So I was thinking a lot about materials. And I was also thinking about, was there a way to do something that actually, where we don't necessarily have to cut down trees to make furniture or other products? In that moment, I was introduced to another entrepreneur in North Carolina, where I was living in Asheville at the time. And he was also manufacturing. We got to talking. I'm starting to go off about materials, and I mentioned maybe hemp, maybe something else, something that grows fast. And this guy Wada said to me, he's like, well, I've got 6 bags of industrial hemp in my garage. And I was like, oh, wait. Who are you? What do you like? Where'd you come from? How did you? And he's like, well, I just spent the last 8 years at SpaceX designing the life support systems to keep astronauts alive on the Dragon crew spacecraft. But I left. I put a spreadsheet together, as a good entrepreneur would, of all the places in the country where we could move. Raleigh came to the top of the list. We showed up. We liked it. We're here. And so I said, okay, wait a second. You're from SpaceX. You have 6 bags of industrial hemp in your garage. You're thinking about materials and carbon removal. Let's just shut our companies and go build a materials company and think about carbon removal. So we did. That's actually how we got started. So we said, okay, can we find something that grows faster than trees? Um, we looked at hemp for a while and realized that it just economically wasn't going to work for our purposes. Um, we got more SpaceXers to come to North Carolina. And so we said, okay, here's what we're going to do. Eventually, we found this fast growing grass, similar to
Mhm.
bamboo, but it's not, but has similar structural properties. It's thinner. We can actually mechanically harvest it, which is really important. We're going to pull carbon from the atmosphere by growing something that grows 9 to 10 times faster than trees. We're going to go build a electric production line, no smokestack, so we don't give this carbon back in the manufacturing, to get to true carbon negativity where we can sequester carbon in the walls and floors and roofs of homes. And we're going to make a product that's better than what builders use today, which is either plywood or now what's replaced plywood, oriented strand board or OSB. It's cheaper,
Mhm.
still structural. We're going to go do that. And so we decided to do that 4 years ago. And that's actually what we're doing. So I started as founding CEO. I was there for the first 3 years, raised a couple of rounds of funding. We established a relationship with D.R. Horton, the largest home builder in the country. Just this past fall, they gave
Okay.
us an order for 10 million panels, which is a lot more than we have the capability to make today. So we're going to be working on that for a while. But uh,
Congratulations.
thank you. Yeah, and it's been very exciting. It's been it was a wonderful, it's a wonderful venture.
And you've been named one of Fast Company's world's most innovative companies. How did that change the ability to raise capital and to get the attention of somebody like D.R. Horton?
I would say more than anything else, and the timing was right for this business when we started thinking about it 4 years ago. The markets were a little more flush than they are today, so people were willing to cast around and be open to an idea like Planted that might be harder to get off the ground today, honestly, than it was 4 years ago. What's interesting in the home building market is
Hmm.
that, of course, on the one end, you have green builders who build incredibly beautifully. So many, right? Not exclusively, but like you have incredible craftsmen, green builders who of course, share these values. And we could go to those builders all day long and be like, hey, we're going to use hemp or some other thing, and we're going to make a carbon negative, blah, blah, blah. Would you be interested? And, and for the most part, they would say yes. They also might say like, well, if it's new, maybe not right away because
Yeah.
I need to see that, right? I'm building a house. It's got to, but whatever, they care. You go to the top of the market to, a lot of the public builders, not all, but a lot of them who are beholden to shareholders and are more attuned to the sustainability conversation because there's some financial pressure coming from Wall Street, and there's
Mhm.
some interest there too. And so I would say we were in the right place with the right team. We got a little bit lucky, and we got D.R. Horton to take an interest and take notice. And then you have the massive middle that really is not paying attention at all to sustainability. So you have this really strange bifurcation. You kind of have to pick your strategy. Are you going to go try and reach the green builders and go, wide with your distribution, or are you going to go narrow and kind of partner up if you can with a large builder? Beazer Homes, another one that's doing all, net zero
Yeah.
ready building, and pick your path to market.
Well, my experience, which goes back to the 80s, is that recessions and downturns and shocks like we're going through right now, and we'll see how bad this recession might be, actually yielded the most productive explosion of innovation that I've ever seen and may have been the most explosive moment of innovation in history. We got mobile computing, the web, AI emerged in that same time frame too, but took a long time to mature. Based on what you know about the market from your experience with Planted, on a scale of 1 to 10, how achievable is a net zero built environment?
Yeah, I have to look at that in two ways. I think there are, because I think there's two components to it. You have the materials systems component.
Mhm.
Well, systems, I would say we're very far along the path to,
We have the technologies we need, as you said
yeah.
earlier. Yeah.
Materials, there's not as much material innovation
Mhm.
taking place that as I would like to see. I mean, for Planted, it's nice. I don't think, from an alternative to timber that can compete in a commodity market, we don't see a lot of competition. I see some cool things happening in Europe. I've seen straw bale starting to actually really kind of commercialize and move kind of out of its niche and kind of take more market share. That's incredibly exciting. But I have some concerns on the home building side. You see a lot of stuff happening around, low carbon or zero carbon concrete. Those technologies are coming. There's still a lot to be figured out. I
Mhm.
mean, I'm an optimist. I think we're going to get there, but I don't see it as a straight shot linear path.
I mean, not to take away your next business idea, but if you were talking to a young entrepreneur who wanted to start a company today in this space, what would you recommend they do?
I don't know if I could assign an industry. I'm not really sure that I could do that. I would probably just
Mhm.
have to give some really general advice. I would say, what causes you the most personal pain? What irritates you the most about what you see? Because it's going to take a long time and you need
Right.
persistence and perseverance, right? Like I think because every industry is changing, whether it's because they're adopting AI, which I've been a skeptic of from an environmental point of view, but I see so many use cases where it's
Mhm.
driving carbon reduction more and really around efficiency more than anything else, but so many, use cases for that. I think it's a very, like you're saying, I think, yeah, I think this moment we're in will create a lot of opportunities. And I think, just still every industry is ripe for disruption. If you want to go big, you have to go to, industries that are heavy, that actually have a big physical footprint in some way and change them.
So you wouldn't recommend somebody start a company, append the phrase AI to it, and then go try to raise money. You'd actually go hard goods and focus on the built environment.
Well,
Is that where
well,
you
what
go?
what I mean by that, Mitch, is so you take a company called like Brainbox AI. Brainbox AI was just acquired by Train Technologies, a Montreal startup, about 5 or 6 years old. They've grown incredibly fast. They use generative AI to make building HVAC systems much smarter. So they
Mhm.
cut consumption by 20 to 25%.
Yep.
And they can tell you with 99% accuracy how many people, who's going to be in a space 6 hours from now, right? And they can tell you the weather, and they can tell you how much renewables are going to be on the grid, and they can tell you the utility
Yep.
cost, right? So then they can say, okay, we got 6 hours to get the temperature to the optimal point for when people are in that space. We don't have to spike the energy, which raises
Mhm.
cost and raises carbon, right? We have the technologies, and that's AI powering a system. And so what that CEO said to me, Sam Ramadori, it really struck home. He was like, the future is really, for solving climate change, is taking software and intelligence in the digital world and mapping it and marrying it to physical infrastructure. And that's how we move forward. And I think he's right. And I think those are just, when you can find them, I think those are really enormous opportunities.
One of the things that's going on in Washington, just for shorthand, is this kind of abandonment of the role of government in capturing a lot of that data. And so we're seeing orphan databases, some particularly around weather, which would be key to the scenario you just described, where the HVAC system knows what's coming, both today and over the long term. Is there an opportunity in this kind of moment of defederalization of data gathering for companies to start up or to pick up one of these databases and begin to use it in a way that could be both profitable and better for the world?
I mean, I absolutely think so. I suspect you think so as well. And we've seen that underway probably also for, I think, about half a decade. I actually, in between some of these ventures, well, probably right before I started that second furniture company, Simply, I mentioned, I was the CEO of a center called the Collider in Asheville.
Mhm.
Um, that NOAA, so National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, its data headquarters is in Asheville, the National
Yeah.
Centers for Environment, right, the NCEI. And so we spun up this center to say, could we take that data and these big brains and this ecosystem of small businesses that are here using that data and create a climate analytics innovation center? And so then you start to say, okay, well, yeah, we want to look at all this big data. We want to look at more weather data. NOAA has their balloons and satellites and all their how they're getting, but then you have like sail drones going out into the oceans, collecting more data, right? You have more nodes. You have citizen science where people are collecting data on their phones. So these are massive opportunities. I think that yes, because of AI and because of ability to ingest that data and actually, gain actionable insights out of it. Yeah, I think that component is potentially really big, really big.
That's really interesting because if you think about it, it's a different organizing point for the environmental movement in this context, where we're all sort of grasping for what we do next in order to make progress.
Completely, completely. And that piece around, especially, I mean, that piece around citizen science is
Hmm.
fascinating, right? Where you
Yeah.
can do it around, I've seen it around soil and taking readings. I've seen it around pollution and using iPhones to capture, certain amounts of data. And
Hmm.
yeah, I think that organizing that data, organizing the effort to understand, the physical world and what's happening, and then put it into these smarter, LLMs, AI systems that can create insights. I actually haven't even really thought about it in a while since you raised it, but my head's probably going to be spinning on 3 a.m.
Well, I'm glad we kept you up. I think it seems like good things happen when you stay awake at night. Josh, this has been a super cool conversation, as I expected it would be. Thank you. Can people keep up on what you're doing, which obviously would take a lot of effort to really keep up on everything?
Thank you so much, Mitch. Getsuper.cool. That's the website for our weekly newsletter, our weekly podcast. We're on social. I tend to be mostly on LinkedIn,
Mhm.
personally, kind of engaging and having conversation, posting information, and would love to connect with listeners who may be interested.
Well, Josh, thanks for joining us today. It's been fascinating.
Thank you, Mitch. I appreciate it.
You've been listening to a conversation with Josh Dorfman. He's the host of The Lazy Environmentalist on Sirius XM and the Sundance Channel. And he's also the CEO of Planted, a low carbon construction materials company, who also recently launched the Supercool podcast, which you can find at getsuper.cool. Get Super is all one word, no space, no dash. Getsuper.cool. Seeing the world through the eyes of an entrepreneur is always interesting to me because even the worst case scenario can blossom into a perceived opportunity. And the question is whether the entrepreneur, as Josh says, has the passion and persistence necessary to transform low value assets into a high value product or service. And on the other side of that equation is the challenge of getting people to embrace that new value and integrate it into their lives. In other words, how do you get consumer adoption of something that's green, sustainable, and ultimately regenerative of our environment? So, in a nutshell, that's the challenge faced by the environmental movement in these deeply divided times. How do we create a middle ground in which reasonable people can discuss new paths forward and organize demand to drive adoption of an environmentally responsible and regenerative lifestyle? Now, that lifestyle, of course, is not a monolithic one-way experience, a my way or the highway approach, but a personal collage of choices that each of us makes to move away from an extractive single-use linear economy. If enough of us take those steps, no matter what those steps might be, they will add up to a change in direction, to the opportunity to start to draw down atmospheric CO2. And as the Swiss reinsurance company Allianz SE recently suggested, even save capitalism from burning down its foundations. If in fact this is the capitalist center of the world, let's save it, let's not tear it down. Josh's work at Supercool is another important source of insight, and I urge you to tune into the show. But also take a look at Planted, his construction materials startup, because it's another model, one of many, for creating opportunities to change society's environmental impact at a time when the United States is turning back to the past, to fossil fuels and continued global warming, as the rest of the world is racing ahead to create a renewable future. We need to lead the green transition to be the economic leader in the renewable era that we have been in the industrial era, when sustainability and regeneration will not just be a consumer preference, but the source of new value creation. It's going to be a long road, and now's the time to double down on our personal commitment to reduce our impact and create a circular economy, which, by the way, is a powerful way to reshore industry as we kind of close down the borders. As Josh and I talked about, logistics and local efficiencies are keys to unleashing economic growth without tearing nature down even more. So, folks, stay tuned. We're going to stay the course no matter how bumpy this ride gets. And I hope you'll take a look at another episode of Sustainability in Your Ear and learn a little bit more and take action today. We've got more than 500 shows to share with your community, so write a review on your favorite podcast platform to help your neighbors find us. Folks, you're the amplifiers that can spread more ideas to create less waste. Please tell your friends, your family, your coworkers, the people you meet on the street that they can find Sustainability in Your Ear on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, or whatever purveyor of podcast goodness that you prefer. Thanks for your support. I'm Mitch Ratcliffe. This is Sustainability in Your Ear, and we will be back with another innovator interview soon. In the meantime, folks, take care of yourself, take care of one another, and please, let's all take care of this beautiful planet of ours. Have a green day.